move on to the panel discussion title, Is Digital Banking Driving Financial Inclusion in POP? And I'd like to introduce the moderator for the panel, who will then invite and welcome the rest of the panelists. Moderator for this panel is Sanjay Doshi, Partner and Head of Financial Services Advisory, KPMG in India. Over to you, Sanjay.
Hi, thanks, Ivan. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this topic today for the panel, which is how is digital banking driving financial inclusion at the bottom of the pyramid? And I think it's a very key one, especially now with the COVID scenario. The digitization of banking definitely has evolved over the last decade or so, with both on the and also on the liabilities and the payment side. And with the advent of regulatory measures, especially around differentiated banking through payments banks, small finance banks, and penetration of wallets, UPI, financial inclusion has definitely been a central theme. And to understand this better, we have an esteemed panel of speakers here with me, and I would like to invite each one of them. So I'll start with Mr. Anubrata Biswas, the MD and CEO of Airtel Payments Bank.
Hi, Sanjay.
Hi. Kezom is the Asia Pacific regional leader of Better Than Cash Alliance, part of United Nations Capital Development Fund. Hey, Kezom.
Hello. Good afternoon.
We also have Nitin Chugh, MD and CEO of Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. Hi, Nitin.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sanjay.
And we have Rishi Gupta, MD and CEO of Fino Payments Bank. Hi, Rishi.
Hi, Sanjay.
Yeah, you're there. Hi, Rishi. So with this, I'll straight away jump on to the conversation, especially given we are short of time. I'll start with Anubrata first. Anubrata, Payments Bank was a very innovative idea, and it's a great medium to reach out to the mass population and especially to the unbanked population. What is your view in terms of how has the model really evolved, especially post-advent of neo-banking and open banking?
Thanks, Ajay. Look, at the heart of it, the model is really quite simple. You have a supply side and you have a demand. On the supply side, you can see the Payments Bank as a normal bank without the credit risk or high fixed costs. Everything else is on the table, be it through cross-selling, transactions, and balances. On the demand side, this allows you to talk to a very large section of consumers in the country who are underbanked or underserved. The villager, the urban migrant, the digital consumer who's not on digital financial services. Naturally, due to lower per capita incomes, they have not been well served by the existing system. So if you put the model for sustainability is really to have a large set of customers taking deposits, processing payments, and doing cross-sell. This means it kicks in at scale, which of course takes some time to build. But I must remind the group that a normal retail branch in the country breaks even on average between 3 to 5 years. And this caters to high to middle income users with high per capita. Our focus has been to solve very structurally the challenges of usage of banking services, under-penetration of formal financial products, as well as the informal and cash economy problems. Particularly during COVID, we've actually seen a very rapid transition in two themes. And I must, before I state out those two themes, recognize that this crisis has had a staggering impact on the lives of people all around us and all across the country. Having said that, we have seen really two sharp shifts. One on the rural side, where we are seeing incredible uptake from consumers, roughly 40 million urban migrants who have gone back to rural at this point in time. And we are seeing a significant uplift in the requirement of banking services close to the rural village. And that's reflecting in our sort of business uptake. And the second significant shift, and I think that has been spoken about quite a bit by many, many stakeholders in multiple panels, is the uptick in digital. Just as a simple thumb rule, Sanjay, our digital transactions have really doubled in the last 45 days. So connecting the two themes and the model I outlined, I do feel payment banks are pretty well placed with a long runway ahead, but with significant scale as an opportunity to solve a really large problem.
Thanks, Anubrata. And in fact, you're right. I think Payments Bank has definitely played a great role. And moving on from, payments bank and the digital system which provides the supplies. Kezom, what's your view, from the entire demand side, and especially with the kind of work you and your organization has done in Northeast? How do we create an enabling environment to ensure financial inclusion for people at the bottom of the pyramid, and also to help build trust for the transition from cash towards digital payments?
Thank you so much, Sanjay. This is a really important question, and we believe that building trust is a prerequisite to accelerating digital payments, whether in India or globally. And we have seen this, Mr. Biswas mentioned just now, in the past few years, digital payments has proven to be an effective tool to drive financial inclusion, enabling hundreds and millions of people to make transactions faster and cheaper. And not only create incentives for people to open accounts, but they also address the account dormancy issues that many countries face, including India, by introducing new use cases, for example, making it possible to afford and access services such as clean water or electricity for the first time. And we see that governments across the board have made some very important moves to foster digital payments, including India, but also across the region and the world. Structures such as payment systems and connectivity. And when I say connectivity, of course, it includes, the nooks and corners of rural India and rural parts of the world. And the government themselves the government themselves are digitizing their own payments, including wages and social transfers, as we see again in the example of India. That said, further action is definitely needed to scale up progress in a responsible way. And we also see that a number of companies, whether it's FMCG companies or agriculture companies, are coming on board, realizing how digitization of payments can really have a positive impact on their supply chain, their business, and on people's lives. So it's a win-win for everyone. But currently, that problem is a big problem in that there's a huge opportunity to still bring people into the fold of the formal financial sector by extending digital payments. And at the Better Than Cash Alliance, we work with over 75 governments, companies, and international organizations to launch and scale. And this is now where I will say is the differentiating factor that we need to now be more committed to, is the responsible agenda of digital payments to advance sustainable development goals. Governments worldwide are taking an active role in shaping the future of technology and where it can take us. For example, closer to home in India, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, they've set up a task force on artificial intelligence to kickstart the responsible use of AI for India's economic transformation. The government's Interministerial Committee on FinTech recommends a risk-based and technology-neutral approach to innovations. And something that all governments worldwide are doing is avoiding private monopolies over digital money and, by extension, people's data. In Bangladesh, we have seen in our work with our member, the government of Bangladesh, as well as the garment brands that we work with in the country, it's really about making sure that the government and the private sector is able to work with the entire ecosystem to increase choice, to lower cost, especially for the 4 million garment workers that are in Bangladesh. And we see this in Colombia and Indonesia as well, where to ensure that the payment plumbing is open to a range of digital firms. This enables really building the use cases that Mr. Biswas just mentioned. And of course, competition means that, you can drive down costs, the poor can afford more services. And from a financial stability point of view, if one firm stumbles, others can step in, making the system more resilient. The second, in terms of really creating that enabling ecosystem, is governments maintaining banks' obligation to keep customers' information private. And this really is a foundation to building trust and has a twofold impact, as we're seeing in the work that we do in Ghana, for example, where not only does the cocoa sector in Ghana contribute over 2 million annually in foreign exchange earnings to the Ghanaian economy, but the wider digitization done in a responsible way really helps the 800,000 families that work in that sector to to now use digital payments in a way that improves their livelihoods and their social outcomes. And this responsible digital payments guidelines that we're leading with governments, with companies, and with international organizations, it's a massive effort to ensure that digital cooperation for payments builds trust and security and is an integral piece for everyone. So the net result then, of confidence and trust is acceleration towards digital money, and it's going to be a result of spontaneous demand and innovation.
No, thanks, Kezom. And I think you're right. I think it's a really cost-effective way to really reach, especially the people who have not been banked till date. Rishi, coming to you and hearing Kezom, what are your views in terms of, do you think enough initiatives have been taken by the government on this part? Or do you see the customers already been on board and moving from cash to digital, or something more needs to be done to digitize the rural economy, especially from the government side, probably?
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Nubrat and Kezom, for the opening remarks. I think a lot of things have been covered in those opening remarks. But from my point of view, I think we need to break this entire cash or digital into two parts. One is for Bharat and the second is for India. And in a COVID situation, actually, we say COVID is creating opportunities in virus infected days. So these are opportunities to get created during COVID period. So when do we look at the government agenda in terms of what has been the government doing during this 60 or 75 days? Government has announced a big financial package, largely targeting around the MSME segment. The focus of the government definitely is on the bottom of the pyramid to customers, the migrant labor, which Anup just mentioned, about 4 crore people which went back from cities to rural India. So I think the government in the last few years, especially from the concept of entire community, from that starting from Jan Dhan, more than 100 crore already issued on the 3 platforms, was the basis of the infrastructure which has been done. To augment that infrastructure, when Fino started about 14 years back, we had a big issue around connectivity, we had a big issue around power, electricity, that how will those things work? If you have equipments in rural India, how will they work if you don't have the basic infrastructure in place? I think over the last 10-15 years, a lot of work has happened on those infrastructure, whether it is training, whether it's skill development, whether it's basic lighting or basic connectivity issues, over and above the digital platforms which have been set up by NPCI or the Jan Dhan Trinity which has happened. The India Stack has actually made it possible. We have heard the Finance Minister, the Reserve Bank of India Governor, the Prime Minister talk about the fact that crores of rupees to the tune of about 30 to 40,000 crore rupees in Jan Dhan accounts have gone out in the last 3 months. Without people visiting branches, without people traveling a lot of distance to get that money. That has been possible with the fact that a lot of improvement has happened in terms of the delivery of financial services to the bottom of the pyramid customers. In Fino alone, we have seen more than double the volume of transactions and value in the last 2 months. To our surprise also, we saw lots and lots of people coming to our platforms to do transactions. Not only that the people were coming, we also saw a big growth in the number of people who wanted to become part of the banking ecosystem in rural India. We used to get about 8,000 leads, 8,000 conversions every month of people who wanted to become BCs under Fino Payments Bank. That number went up to 20,000 in the month of May, and we are seeing a similar number in the month of June. So not only the fact that people are using banking services as or alternate banking services or alternate channels to provide banking services, which could not have been possible without the government interference, whether it's on the infrastructure, whether it's on the digital platforms, whether it is on the regulation. The faith of the government I have seen in the last 90 days. Business correspondents, we saw the SBI chairman also talking about that the bank mitras, that nearly 35 million transactions compared to 12 million transactions they were doing on their own banking branch platform. So now, if I look at the alternate channels, which has been possible because of the regulations which have been supported by the government and the Reserve Bank of India, and the infrastructure of basic infrastructure and the digital infrastructure which has come up in the last so many years, has actually made this possible. So maybe when I look at demonetization, I think that was a big moment for digital companies in getting wallets into the big space. I think the COVID situation has enabled the bottom of the pyramid, the rural economy, the people who are the underprivileged people get basic banking at their doorstep. In fact, during this period, we started this doorstep delivery in cities also like Bombay, Delhi, and we saw 100 to 200 leads coming every day. And we visited many societies in Delhi, Bombay, and other big cities to deliver cash. So while the cash was there in the ecosystem, the ATMs could not deliver that money because of the CMS issues or the other delivery issues. The banking channels or the alternate banking channels, which are nearly about 1 million now all over the country, and has actually stepped up. And this could not have been possible without the regulatory and the infrastructure support which happened over the years from the government. I think that's a big moment for all of us. I think if you remember when the entire Aadhaar payment system started or digital payment system started on DBT, before that we had so many people in the middle who used to be the channel through which the money used to get dispersed to the lower income and to the bottom. Now all of them has been completely removed. Nobody needs to visit a branch. Nobody needs to go through a middleman. The money directly comes from the government into the bank accounts and it's withdrawn through fingerprints or debit cards. And that's, I think, a big change which could not have been possible, or we could not even dream that it can be made possible without the government actually supporting the infrastructure and relying their trust on the fact that they were dispersing crores of money to crores of people, and without any fuss, without any noise in the ecosystem, the money got dispersed. We alone dispersed money to roughly about 2.5 to 3 crore people in the last 60 days. So that's the volumes which I'm sure Anuprit has also seen, as he was mentioning, we have also seen. So the dependence of the branch and the ATM network in rural India across the country has come down thanks to the bank mitras and the alternate channels of digital means through which the banking has become possible. And this would not have been possible without the government support. Thank you.
No, absolutely, Rishi. I think you raised relevant points, and I'll come back to the points, especially which you have raised around connecting and the ATM's role and the merchant's role. But before that, I would also like to bring one more aspect, which I'll ask Nitin. Nitin, when you talk about digital, right? I think a lot of conversation right now we had was on payments and the transactions. But you've been seeing both sides. You've been seeing the liabilities as well as the entire lending side of the book. And you all have been the pioneers here, right? Especially starting with microfinance and now being a bank. How do you see this COVID-19 playing out in terms of the borrower behavior? And do you believe digital banking per se is going to grow significantly now with this entire COVID-19 and social distancing which has really happened?
Well, thank you for having me here, Sanjay. I think first of all, digital banking on its own, pre-COVID also, we were seeing that it was growing for the segments of customers that we deal with, and we deal with the not necessarily the bottom of the pyramid. We deal with the unserved and the underserved, which comprises of people who are also at the bottom of the pyramid, but not necessarily only there. So we have to first understand that all these customer segments, quite like the affluent or the middle class or the wealthy, they all go through a life cycle. They go through a time when the adoption levels are really low. You need some people who will step up, ahead of the others, will take the initiative of understanding and adopting digital. And then eventually more people will follow, and eventually more people will come into the ecosystem. But we also have to understand that all of these economies work as micro ecosystems. So if you are trying to, let's say, solve a problem for a village, or let's say a small little town, today it's possible for people like us because our employers pay us digitally. We end up paying, the people that we deal with, whether it's a merchant or other people that we have to send money to, or let's say, even for consumption, we have the ability to do that digitally because the ecosystem has evolved. If we had one part which was broken, let's say we were only, the intake was digital, which was a credit into the account. But let's say the offtake of consuming that money once it comes into your account, whether it came through a DBT or it came through a salary credit, if that option and that ecosystem isn't there, people end up withdrawing cash. And that then, breaks the whole chain. So I think this whole micro ecosystem, or whichever way we look at it, does require a lot of us, all of us, the industry, the government, the regulators, and everybody who is a stakeholder here to work together to develop that ecosystem. And the way that really happens is that once people start dealing in payments on a digital basis, they don't see anything wrong with dealing with the bank on a digital basis. Now, banking is really about debits and credits at the end of it, right? It is not any more sophisticated than that. Finally, you need to bring in money from somewhere into your account, and you need to use that money somewhere. Okay, and everything else is in between, whether we call it whatever we call it. So I think we have solved the problem on the supply side to say that, okay, we will, let's say, disburse money into your account on a digital basis. So that problem was solved, which meant that we had to first go and open accounts for all these customers, which we did over the last 3 years. The second step is that, okay, now the money is in the account, now you want to use it digitally. But the first instinct is that go and withdraw that money from an ATM, or go to a branch and withdraw that money, and again go back to using it in cash. So then that requires the customer to also come up with a way of using that money digitally. So now we are working on making sure that we develop an ecosystem around the customer's microeconomy, so that the acceptance wherever they want to pay is also done digitally. If they are into some kind of a business, they also start using QR codes. And obviously you can't do away with cash altogether, but gradually move towards a situation where everybody moves up together, rather than, one part of the ecosystem is leading, but the other part of the ecosystem is not even starting off, then it will not work. So that is where I think we have to give it time. In our case, we have seen a change in digital transactions, which was 8% in March 19, going up to 35% in March 20, which gives us the confidence that yes, people are accepting and people are willing to work together. As an example of this whole collaborative ecosystem where all the stakeholders come together, since Anubrata is also on the panel, I do want to highlight that we are working very closely with his bank, right? And we wanted to come up with an alternate mechanism for our customers to even use cash the way they have. So we are also trying to challenge some of these old models to say that, okay, fine, you have cash, you want to come to the branch, or we will come and collect it from you. Can there be a better and a more efficient way? So the digital integration has probably happened between our bank and Anubrata's bank, right? But the customer is still generating cash, consuming cash, is finally going and depositing cash. Eventually, those customers will also move to lesser cash, and then hopefully on some day, to cashless also. But we have to give it time, and all of us have to be at it all the time.
No, absolutely. I think one of the things which we also have thought through a lot, and which probably needs a lot of digitization, is the entire collection process, right? I think the entire remittance has really gone down, disbursement has gone down, but I think the digital way, but the collection, and that's where probably in this times it's really hit a bit. But again, coming back to you, Anubrata, and we Rishi spoke about the ATMs. Nitin said that you all have been working together in terms of this entire cash. Now with UPI, let's say, coming in, do you see the relevance of ATMs going? People will really go towards UPI more and use those as payments mechanism, and hence creating this entire infrastructure and spending that money around creating ATMs and loading them with cash. Is that something which is going to change? It's going to go down, or is it really going to coexist?
Okay, let me sort of quickly, answer that and get that out of the way. Ultimately in the country, we have to keep one thing in mind. India has the highest, or I would say in the top 5 brackets, population density per branch. Yeah. And if you just plot the per branch deposit, India has the lowest per branch deposit in the world. So essentially that means the branch model is fundamentally maxed out. And unless you have a very radical cost to serve, which really reorients, and we call this the thousands to hundreds model, it's not really going to be a sustainable model to serve the bottom of the pyramid. ATMs have a role to play as long as they deliver a good cost to serve. Yeah. Now, if you look at digital payments right at the bottom, I want to share a model which we've been thinking about for a while and some insights around that. We believe there are 3 I's required. Yeah. The first I is that we need a set of influencers, and let me give you the statistics around this. Every single village we have opened accounts in, 20% of those bank accounts account for 80% of the digital payments in that cluster or community of that village. That ratio changes dramatically as you move up the tiers, so that it flips to 60% of consumers accounting for 80% of payments. So what we have seen is that there is a very strong role of influencers. Typically, they tend to be between 25 to 35 years of age, in educating people around for digital payments. The business correspondent, of course, is a natural I would say, change agent or vehicle for that. But that's something we have to keep in mind when we are looking at this digital payment model in, I would say, a lesser educated or a less digitally savvy community. The second big I is the fact that, as Nitin pointed out, and again, another staggering fact, there are 350 million people who use digital content, TikTok, YouTube, Google, but aggregate across the country, there are only 150 million people who use digital financial services in their phone. That's a 200 million opportunity right there. And the simple insight is people don't have money in their bank account to begin with to turn digital. And that's where the concept is that you need to really look at the intermediary chains. What Nitin was pointing out, the ecosystem, we look at that and call that value chains, the dairy value chain, the food processing value chain. And you necessarily need to really look at how that entire value chain can get digitized point by point. Yeah. And the third really, I is what we call incentives. Ultimately, for a consumer to transact and for a merchant to accept, at the very core of it, there should be value at the beginning. Either you mandate a merchant to put a QR code, and our proposal has always been tier 5 and tier 6 villages, an active business correspondent, give a subsidy of 500 rupees a month, generate 10 million jobs, and ensure that those merchants become digital. So these are 2-3 simple ideas, but if you just take these 3 I's together, and Nitin, we are delighted with the partnership we keep talking about with Jivan in our daily calls, every day. If you look at these 3 I's together, I think us, Nitin, ourselves, Rishi, all of us have a role to play in getting this ecosystem and this model really kicking in, along with the government, because part of the incentives I really feel the government can look at it from moving from a demand side, which is incentivizing the consumer, towards also incentivizing the supply side, which are the business correspondents who are delivering the digital services.
No, well said, Amrut. I think that's one element which probably is required, right? You need to incentivize the enablers of this entire digital system and not only probably think about the users. I think it has to be balanced out. And back to that point, Rishi, if you have to ask a question, let's say to the merchants, given this entire spend they had to make on POS, of course, POS coming in reduces the spend. But again, something like QR or UPI coming in completely takes away a lot of those spend. How do you see the merchants reacting to it?
See, again, I would say we look at India and then we try to paint the entire picture with that India focus. We have to look at Bharat and we have to look at India. So those are separate things. As Anubharat mentioned, 350 million people use digital content, only 150 million do financial transactions. So there is definitely issues around people in terms of education, their confidence, the comfort. Even I would say in urban India also, when the digital content is pretty high, the usage is pretty low to that extent. So one thing is, again, in India, you have to understand, or the entire country per se, which is a mix of India and Bharat, is that India is very different across different states. You don't look at Delhi, Bombay as the entire country. You have to look at Patna, you have to look at Varanasi, you have to look at Gorakhpur, you have to look at all those locations which are there, which are very, very remote. So that is what India is all about. And when you go from Delhi to Lucknow, maybe to Bombay, to South, everything keeps on changing. We have seen the acceptance of digital is much higher in South and banking high in South. But when you come to the central part of India, where the maximum population of India resides, there we don't see that level of penetration which is there. So you have to understand, and that is something which I've been talking about for so many years in multiple panels, is that you have to look at the complete India picture. Don't look at only top 10, 20 cities and you painted that, yeah, entire UPI QR is there. I've seen, when I visited a lot of rural places, I've seen that QR code penetration has gone up. Merchants are signing up on QR. A lot of merchants signing up because of the fact what Anubharat also mentioned about the incentives which are being offered to them. Okay, you become a payment platform for my ecosystem, I'll pay you money. But the bigger in terms of the customer migration, and that is where we come up with the phygital approach of the country. The phygital approach, India is very unique. India will not move from physical to digital overnight. It will move over a period. It has its own journey, and in that journey, the merchant definitely plays a big role, but the customer also plays one bigger role, where a lot of assistance is required. We did a survey for all our customers in terms of when they move to digital. 7% of the people came back with that in that survey saying that we have moved to digital with some assistance. So they needed assistance to move from physical to digital. That's the invisible layer within the phygital model. And out of that 70% who actually moved with assistance, and 86% of the people actually continued to do second and the third transaction on digital. So there is a help which is required. So coming to your question in terms of MPOS, or whether QR and UPI will be all in all in terms of ecosystem, I think in India, multiple things will run. You have to have multiple platforms. Not everybody will use only one platform. We understand nearly 750 million debit cards are there already in the country. So those debit cards use a particular device, and the MPOS or the POS machines cost have also come down drastically because of the small POS machines which are now available. The cost is not an issue in terms of it is acceptance and the comfort in which the customer actually does this service. And as Nitin also mentioned, that cash continues to be the bigger play in rural India. So long you have cash, you can convert. Money is coming in digital form through the government. We have seen people going and withdrawing money in cash, but the ecosystem around rural has to get created, where more and more merchants accept QR code and people get comfortable. You also have to understand only 350 million or 400 million, I don't have the current numbers, on smartphones. So these are the people who can use QR. These are the people who can use UPI. But what about the 700 million people who don't have a smartphone? Feature phones are the standard phones which are used for nearly 60-70% of the population in the country. So how will they work? So you have to provide a multiple ecosystem. And as we say in Fino, let the customer decide. You provide all options to him. You provide a UPI option, you provide a QR option, you provide a debit card option, you provide a micro ATM option, you provide an APS option, you provide internet option. You provide all the options to the customer. Let him choose what he wants to, is most comfortable with. And this is a journey. And Nitin is saying 15% of the people were there 2 years back. Now 35% of the people have moved on. So people are moving in that journey, but don't force them to move. And you have to accept the ecosystem in the country, the way the infrastructure is, and the way the people are comfortable doing transactions. So as I said earlier, and you can see the demand for cash, the amount of cash when Demon happened, we had about 13-14 lakh crores of cash. Now we are 23 or 24 lakh crores of cash. So definitely there is a demand for cash which has gone up. But if you look at digitization also, it has gone up. So both the ecosystems will play their part in the country. And whether it's a QR code, the cost of infrastructure, at least on the MPOS, is no longer a debate. It has become very, very cheap. It has come to a level when anybody can afford, and it can enable you to do transactions on debit cards and through biometric also. So merchant looks at that, okay, let me get a QR, let me get a debit card, POS machine, and also let me see what other channels through which I can do sales, because he doesn't want the customer to go back. And let the customer decide the way he wants to do transactions. So cost of infrastructure, at least on MPOS, is not a debate, Sanjay, anymore. I think the acceptance from the customer point of view is the key, and it is a journey. It will happen over a period of time. So don't rush. It will happen.
Well, to continue this conversation, it was quite illuminating to hear from all the very unique but influential players in the Indian industry. I mean, you all work together and really thinking of it from the last mile customer's point of view. How do you solve for grievances?
Sorry, I have to interrupt because we've run out of time for the panel discussion, and we're also running behind schedule. So we will close the panel here itself. And I would like to thank, unfortunately, Sanjay's mic, there was some technical issue, but we had to close the panel anyways. So I would like to thank Sanjay for moderating the panel, and I would like to thank all of you for your insights on this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.